I find Defense Unicorns to be a very interesting company providing a significant value in a space that fits between a very conservative organization, the government, and this very still kind of wild west environment of open source, right? And I look at it from two perspectives, one of which is, so yes, your management gets this, they're keeping things as open as possible, but like I said, I mean, you get to be a vendor of and a representative that puts some level of control and normalcy and typical vendor process for your customer, be it the government, around that space. And that's a huge value for your customer. And it also is a significant, it's a way of building business value that isn't directly tied to the software, which I see so very often to be a struggle and quite frankly, one that I rarely can reconcile with a typical, open core or any other type of business model, so to speak, around open source. That value that you bring, the service that you bring to to your customer. Yeah, talk a little bit about that. I mean, how does your management see that? Is it true? I mean, I'm not saying it's all butterflies and unicorns either. As far as the government going, oh well, defense unicorns, they're a prime. Maybe not. So you're not of that stature. It's not as though you don't have hurdles, but you're also making significant ground, and I expect laying some norms that didn't exist before that are very helpful. Can you talk a little bit about that? And am I right in that perception, or do I paint too rosy a picture?
No, I'll address the rosy part first, then kind of zoom out to explain how we operate, because I do think it is pretty unique. Trying to be unbiased in that opinion, but I think a lot of times something that frustrates me in our collective space is like the LinkedIn persona of how awesome it is to work at a software startup. Like, it actually is really freaking hard, like really hard. It requires not only hard work and discipline, but it requires a lot of writing, a lot of reading, a lot of learning. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to go join this remote async vibe. And I'm like, it is that. But what I like to tell people, especially when we interview them, is like the work is the work, and we are flexible that you can like piece it around, but it doesn't go away. Like you got to choose the time that it's still going to happen, right? You can't just make it go away. And I bring that up because it's not just defense unicorns. There's a collection of other companies that are like us who I think we're all kind of standing on each other's shoulders in some ways. If that, I know that analogy isn't perfect, but there's been a collection of us, I think, breaking glass in this idea of like software integration can happen differently for this space than it has in the past. And you bring up a great point. I was like, when I first took this job, my CEO, Rob Slaughter, everything is free at Defense Unicorns, meaning the software. And my job in a lot of ways with one of my or a couple of my peers is like, we got to make money still somehow so that we can be a part of this community. So like you're painting yourself into a very constrained box intentionally, but it's worked. But to answer your question up front is like, it hasn't been easy. Right. And I think
Mhm.
what I would describe is Defense Unicorns, the way we've done it is I look at us like if my grandma, and she has, says like, what is defense unicorns? That sounds made up. Like, what do you do every day? And I try to explain it first, and I don't mean to belittle people's intelligence because I know that's not the case for the following of this podcast, but we deliver other people's software. I think of us like FedEx or UPS. I know Amazon's kind of eaten their own chain in that way, so it's not as good of an analogy anymore. But like people identify something they want, and then they need it to go over here, right? And that here is a pretty unique spot. In some cases, you could compare it to like shipping something to Hawaii in this case, right? We do that part, right? Like we go pick it up, put it in a box, secure it all nice and tight, put it somewhere else, unpack it so it still does what you thought it was going to do, right? That's what we do as a company. And I describe it that way first to say, like, I think software, I would almost consider us a software system integrator, right? Instead of just a system integrator, specifically a software system integrator. So because we do that, that doesn't mean we're not a product company who doesn't build productized solutions to make ourselves more efficient, right? Because our project that we just donated to OpenSSF, ZARF, which is the kind of flagship thing we started with, is an air gap deployment tool for Kubernetes specifically right now. It can probably do other things in the future too. But one of the first challenges that ate our efficiency was like all these systems we deliver to on the other ends don't have egress access at all. And guess what? A lot of software that was built in the cloud breaks when you try to run it on an on-prem server. And so there's a lot of things you can do when you package up all the dependencies and redeploy them and reroute them to do that. And that's what Zarf is. Then you have the problem of integrating multiple applications together, typically running in Kubernetes. So we wrote a controller to do that for us so that we can automate some of that away, right? We're just keeping eating steps of this value chain. But to get to the overall point, the reason I wanted to zoom out first is you're 100% right. What I love about us is we sit in between software suppliers who want to do good things to help national security and the national security market, and they don't know how to talk to each other. And we have went through the pain of learning that translation, and so a lot of the business value we provide is what I'll call the market research and acquisition steps of value delivery. Like those are left of even touching the software. We can help the government understand their gap analysis, help them understand the 12 vendors that may have solutions that help them evaluate it, make it discoverable, comparable. Just like when I need to buy something, I go to Amazon first myself and I can see 17,000 different vendors at this point that sell the same thing, and I can quickly check stars and prices and see when it can get to my house. Like that's all we're trying to do for the government space, right? Like the suppliers want in, they know it's good for their business to sell if they have somebody to help, right? But typically when they don't do it, their business case internally is like, it's too much to staff the contracting officers. It's too much to figure out the federal acquisition regulation. It's too much to understand their legal. Well, they have a partner in that now, right? Like if they don't have to do that and we're willing to take that cost on and then make the transaction with the government and share in that revenue, now both sides can close that gap, right? And I think that's the business value. Getting back to your question, is like the business value isn't just software. The business value is understanding how to work with governments, and there's a lot that can be done. Again, even productize. Can't productize everything probably end to end, but you can make it a lot better with products.
No, exactly. And that's why I find your company such a great example to talk about how that value sits outside of the software, right? The software that you work on, the software that you contributed to OpenSSF, Zarf, great tool. It's a technology widget. It is not a
Mhm.
solution, right? It's
Correct.
something that can be used. You've incorporated it into a much broader ecosystem that you're providing to your customer, right, to the benefit of, as you say, the vendors that you're working with that are trying to deliver software. And that's what I think is so often missed when organizations try to create these pieces of software and then quote unquote build a business around it. It's just it's such a non-starter to me, and I think that's why we're seeing the rug pulls we're seeing with various companies going, yeah, this open source thing isn't working anymore. I need to get more customers paying revenue. Let's change the license. And that's just alienating an entire ecosystem that thought that we were all doing the same thing working together. So that's why I can easily explain the value that Red Hat brings. And
Mhm.
it's not just support and service, it's building an ecosystem of software providers that hardware vendors can lock onto with customers. And
Yep.
same thing for software customers or software vendors working with their customers. What hardware does this thing run on? Right. I mean, they built that ecosystem and that entire trust network between software application vendors and hardware vendors with an operating system that is going to work on both, right? That's the value that they brought. And similarly, that's what you're bringing with your customers and your partners. So I like to be able to call that out just as a great example of putting value, providing significant value that's actually not directly coupled to the software, and the software is just a widget.
Yeah, the vision for us, I would describe it another way, is like a marketplace that is like national security as a first class customer. Because like
Yeah.
the good thing about a marketplace is they're well understood. That's not a thing where you have to translate anymore. Like everybody interacts with the marketplace if they use Amazon or even any cloud services like Azure, right?
Yep.
What we want to do is do that in a way that we know the things being put in the marketplace can actually get to a national security customer. So like that's really the vision for defense unicorns, right? To your point about building an ecosystem, we want competition. We saw on the inside how good competition is for the defense space. And keep in mind, it's all of our tax dollars being used to procure those things, so it's good for all of us. Like, and so we just want to populate a place where where the data is transparent and people can make clear buyer decisions and know that value can be delivered, right? Because too often, I can tell you so many times in the government, I've seen people go through all the steps to get somebody on contract, and on the other end, they get a license key to software. Well, if you're a government program manager, and this literally happened to me, I get a license key emailed to me on whatever base I'm sitting on. That literally does me no good. I need somebody to deploy the software and enable the license key and meet all my cybersecurity compliance from NIST 800-53, be on call for operations. I think there's this fallacy with the lack of training in the software ecosystem that like buying a piece of software off the shelf is your solution. That is like one step out of 1,000 that you need, right? And that's why it gets complicated. You need an ecosystem or a marketplace around it that does a lot of things together. And the more people that are willing to work with the national security market, the better it is, because it's like, again, going back to an MBA that I got too early in my career, but like a free economy is a free economy. Competition drives down price. Like it's just basic economics at that point. And so that's what we're trying to do. That's more of a vision statement. It's where we're headed. But I think that's why we're so happy that there's other people in this space. We don't want it to just be us. The more people, the better. Just like open source, right? The more eyes, the more contributions, the more conversation, the more thought leaders, the better, right? It's more informed policy. It's more informed vendors. It, like, to us, being open and transparent is a value and like a cultural norm. It's not like a thing that we do. It's who we are.